What I hope I've shown through This Is Not Who We Are is the relationship between media and the dehumanization of people. In the case of Rwanda, the Radio-Télévision des Mille Collines, which was the state-sponsored radio, was used as a weapon to brainwash a large portion of the population. I mean, the level of alphabetization in Rwanda at the time was very, very low. So a lot of people listened to the radio rather than reading newspapers. And radio provided a sort of constant background noise and repetition about Hutu power and increasingly violent rhetoric. When I was doing research, I found the transcript of the radio in the months in the run-up to the start of the genocide in April. And you can see how the language ramps up and people are becoming increasingly violent in their language. And at the point when the genocide started in Easter of 1994, the radio was actually urging people to go out with their machete and kill their neighbors. So to me, it was interesting because we now live in an era of social media. At the point when I was writing This Is Not Who We Are, Donald Trump was in power. There was a lot of polemic around the role of social media, misinformation and fake news. And it struck me that there's nothing new there, but that there's also a pattern, a dangerous pattern that seems to be repeating itself, where the media are being used and misused as a conduit to make certain part of the population being seen as being somehow less human, less relatable, and that this is a very dangerous course of action. And I think as we're recording this, we now Russia has invaded Ukraine and we're at war. And again, when you listen to the news and see the difference in rhetoric between what the Russians are hearing on the news and what being told, is quite disturbing. And I wanted to show in a narrative form how the mechanisms, or get people to think about the mechanisms of how this misrepresentation through the radio in the first hand, but also the misrepresentation that happened in the West during the genocide, where the newspaper consistently misrepresented the historical context, because I think to an extent nobody really bothered to check, nobody bothered to ask me. Everybody made assumptions about, well, it's just a tribal battle between people, which is not factually correct. And that's something that I explore in the book. But the opposition, or the fake opposition between the Hutu and the Tutsi is a construct. It is something that was created by the Belgian, and the Belgian rule. The Belgian had inherited the racial constructs from World War II and then Nazi Germany, and they imposed identity cards where the population of Rwanda had to be described as being either Hutu or Tutsi, with understanding that those qualifications, and there's three in fact, there's Hutu, Tutsi and Twa, were job titles that refer to whether the Twa were hunter-gatherers and the Hutu and the Tutsi were, one were cattle owner and the other one worked as farmers for them. And the Belgian took those three denominations and turned them into racial denomination, which they were never in the first place, which is the reason why both in the book, but also in other literature, you find that within one family you could have Hutu and Tutsi. They were not different tribes, and that ethnologues have shown since that the Hutu and the Tutsi don't meet the definition of different tribes because they had the same language, the same religion, the same historical heritage and cultural heritage. They are all Rwandan. So the fact that the news reported systematically that the Hutu and the Tutsi were different tribes missed the fact that that construct had been created by the Belgian rule. And after the War of Independence, there was a slow and systematic process of dehumanization of the Tutsi from the Hutu for 60 years. And there had been instances in the 70s, there had been instances already of violence. And a lot of Tutsi had fled to Burundi. And then that carried on until the point where in 1994, when the president's plane was shut down and things exploded as they did, And the genocide itself only lasted 100 days, but it costed 800,000 lives.